Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called Reweaving Your Ancestral Story. Ritual, story, and song to remember the forgotten, heal the past, and rekindle belonging. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm delighted to be with you here today because I love learning from new teachers who have something really important and novel and valuable to share. And so we have a new exciting teacher to bring to you today. Her name is Gemma Benton, and she is known for her transformational art workshops and for sharing stories and wisdom during 27 years of working in Native American and Indigenous communities. We just are coming off of an incredibly successful Ancestral Healing Summit with 47,000 participants, and we're really recognizing how hungry people are to reweave the story of our ancestry, to access the wisdom and to heal the places that need attention and healing. And we really feel that Gemma has some important practices, teachings, and messages for you. So welcome to today's program, Gemma.
Thank you, Stephen. It's such an honor to be here. It feels so good to be part of your community, and knowing that all the work that your community has been doing leading up to this topic of ancestral healing. So it's really, the time is perfect, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to have this time with Gemma, and I also want to let you know that we are going to have a whole new program which we're super excited about, and we'll share a little bit towards the end of the hour. But Gemma, I know that creating sacred space is very important for you and your lineages, and I think it can be really beautiful for us to all consciously create a sacred space as we're joining, not just informationally or a lot of busyness, that we're really joining into a sacred space in which the deepest level of transformation and healing can happen.
Absolutely, Stephen. So I want to invite everybody to get a glass of water if you haven't already, and then just to keep that nearby. So the water acts as a witness to everything that we're doing. It's a container for our stories and our ancestors' stories. And as we are going to share and going to offer a prayer and songs and intention for healing for all of us, that water, that sacred water, Miniwi Chazani, we say, water is life, is a container for holding all that we need and delivering it to us. So we'll use that water, that sacred water, at the very end as part of our ritual. So I invite you to take a deep breath and just get seated. So we offer a prayer. Dhammayapa Tukashla Gishmanatu, spirits of the four directions, Eshinza, Niyananawa. Thank you for our lives. Thank you for our relatives, Creator God. Thank you for looking into our minds, bodies, and spirits, those places where we are in need, and those places where we are holding the fullness. Thank you for blessing this time together, speaking deeply into the songs and the stories and all that we share in this moment. All the things said, all the things unsaid, all the places, both and in between. The spirits of our ancestors, we thank you for being part of this moment with us. Thank you for joining us in these circles of healing and hope. Thank you for speaking to us in our moments of awareness and our moments of dreaming. Thank you for the way that you bless this moment, now and always, for the generations. Oyanina, all my relations.
Thank you. What a beautiful blessing and opening. Well, I think it occurs to me the best place to begin is with your own ancestral story and how you have rewoven that as part of, and then start to get into some of the general principles and practices that people can learn from you.
Absolutely. So I will share that I am Menominee and Filipino. I'm mixed heritage, and I did not grow up knowing my traditional ways. In fact, I grew up an Air Force brat and ended up traveling from place to place. And long story short, that came as a way of learning about belonging and not belonging, about being disconnected and fragmented, and then searching for the answers of where do I belong? And where am I woven into the history of the places that I've been and the places that I'm becoming? So really, my journey with ancestral healing began as a little girl making, on the playground, making necklaces with my invisible grandmothers and talking with them, feeling them, and always knowing they're a part of my life, but not knowing how. And then fast forward as I moved through my own recovery process, recovery as a human being, recovery from addiction and alcoholism, recovering myself as a Native woman and mixed heritage woman, learning about the spiritual wound that we all have, and understanding that spiritual wound has to do with being separated from our ancestors, from the places where our ancestors are buried and our stories are still told. Those places hold such power for us that when we are separated from them, we've been disconnected from them, either because our ancestors had to move or because of shifting of culture and atmosphere, all that's happened in the last 400, 500 years with society has caused us to create these splits, these separations from who we are and our place on the earth and our place with our ancestors. So fast forward that until more recently, I got to work here in the California area with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. And actually, it was like a final stage in my really, I guess I want to say, deepening my practice with the ancestors, where I got to repatriate, and that means to bring back traditional baskets that are part of the California Native culture here, and working on sacred sites. And it was there and singing to the bones of the ancestors of this place that it really deepened for me. And in this time, looking at all the things that we're experiencing, all of the hardship, the heartbreak, the violence, along with the deepening of these meaningful conversations and the opportunities to share using technology, using all of these things from our hearts. So I use this language both and. It's both the difficult times and the power and beauty combined together that really created this urgency for me to share this message about the ancestors and to deepen my work around healing, not only with the ancestors, but with community and with each other.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for your story. It's a great example of how whatever the wound is in our life becomes the gift as well when we really work with that. So one of the things that I've already learned from you just in talking with you some is just how important it is for us to reclaim the ancestor stories that we often want to push in the closet. Sometimes a lot of families have like the hidden ancestor that we don't want to know about, or that there was something around that they had an addiction, or that there was something that was a shame to the family. But from what I hear from you, it's like it's particularly important that we actually look at and reclaim those stories as well, right?
It's hugely important because we can't move forward until we do. So if it were as simple as, I just heard this morning somebody talking about, the past is an illusion. And I thought, well, if that were really true, then there wouldn't be a need for us. There wouldn't be a pull for us to try to forgive. So forgiveness really is a process of presencing the past. If we're too quick to forgive, oftentimes we get stuck with the shame and the guilt. If we are able to say to that place of addiction, and I believe, I guess it's important to back up, in a native way, an indigenous way, we think of those, that addiction, that trauma, that dis-ease as a spirit. And literally, I've seen it that way. So if we think about it as a spirit that has visited us, a spirit, a dark spirit of addiction, then it simply is in presencing that spirit of addiction that it softens and it turns into a gift. The urgency, the conflict, the difficulty, the shame and the guilt is around trying to hide from it, or trying to ignore it, or trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. But when we become available to it, when we were willing to say, not to confront it and stare it in the eye, and try to force it down, but to say, just like we would to a child, I see you, and I understand where that wounding comes from. So in my own life, as part of my own recovery, I had to do that for myself. And then in loving people who were addicted or who were harmful or hurtful, not condoning their behavior, but looking at them and saying, I understand where that comes from. I know, I see it, that it's come down through the generations and it's visited you like a dark spirit. And so together, the soul of who you are and the soul of who I am and our ancestors gather around that wound. And together we heal it. So it's a presencing. It's as simple as that, really.
Well, one of the things I'd love for you to share a little bit more about why that's important, because I think that just like as sometimes we want to kind of move away from the less savory aspects of our own history, it's like there's a tendency in families to want to move away from the less desirable, focus on the positives. Oh, we had a famous ancestor here, rather than this work. But maybe share a little bit why does that shift our present reality? How does it benefit us to do this work of reclaiming sort of marginalized ancestors, if you will?
I think our present times are a statement to that, Stephen. So it always is that we go to our most vulnerable parts. So in our society, what we're experiencing, I call it a historical reenactment. I feel like we are revisiting those pains. And until we finally do that, we can't move to the vision that we hold. And part of that is just what you mentioned at the very beginning. We have to not only presence those difficult places, but and move through them, not just dealing with our shame and our guilt, but moving through them gently, thoroughly, completely, not in a grunging, like we have to go through every detail, but really being fully present to them so that we can, like in the hero's journey, reclaim that gift. We are reclaiming ourselves and the fullness of ourselves. So when we talk about people going through this ancestral healing work, really that's the biggest part that they reclaim is themselves. And it seems a small thing to do, but we spend a lifetime doing it. And this is an opportunity for people to really go deep with it, to really sit in these places and be present with each other and our ancestors. And really, we can't move from this place. Everything in our present time history is telling us that this is the time that we need to sit. This is the time for these deep, meaningful conversations. Technology is offering that to us from the comfort of our homes, that we get to sit and talk about what's deepest to our hearts. We know that it's not a matter of having to, we don't have to tell all of the dark secrets. It's a matter simply that we are not running from them, that we're willing to say, I see you. So I share oftentimes about like little kids. We all have seen little kids get a little wound and how they, mom, or grandma, look at this boo-boo that I have. Really our ancestors are like that. That's those stories repeat and repeat and repeat through the generations until we can finally say, I see you. And holding that wound in our hands, holding them in our awareness, say, I see you and I understand that you were deeply wounded by this. and I love you. Everything is calling us to do that, piece by piece, story by story. The storytelling, the healing story, and the storytelling movement is huge because it offers places for us to do that. We know as part of the healing story movement that there are huge things happening in the medical field and recovery fields around healing story, simply because of the way that story offers us a mechanism to go into these moments that isn't about therapy. Anyone can share a story. Anyone can listen. It's about learning that our role isn't to try to fix things. It's becoming more present and available to things. And out of that presence, out of our capacity to connect, that's what's healing. And that's where those solutions come up from. It's not out of these places of desperately trying to fix the wound. It's that we have within ourselves those own mechanisms for healing, and our presence with each other and around these wounds activates that natural healing, and we are stronger because of it. We're stronger because of it, not only for myself, but with each other. So what I'm excited about is sharing this with the Shift Network, because it becomes part of the vocabulary. It becomes part of the language and culture to honor these places. So as long as we try to bypass and try to avoid these places, it just comes back at us stronger and stronger. But as part of your community, we get to offer this gift as part of the community. It's part of the language. It becomes part of the culture to the community. It also becomes part of a culture in our families. Like, we begin to have these conversations, not based around trying to guilt someone or shame somebody, but like, I'm really here to listen, maybe for the first time. And as I listen, not only am I learning from you, but you're learning. And we're learning together. We're developing capacity together, and we continue growing. It's the gift that continues giving. It grows and it grows and it grows.
Beautiful. What a beautiful explanation. I'd love for you to hear a little bit more about how the arts weave into this, because I know your beautiful voice. You do song, you do ritual. There's different art aspects of it. How do the arts help us to reweave this story and create a healing story out of what was once a sort of a suppressed or problem story?
Absolutely. So. And that's such a fabulous question, because it goes really to the heart of why I do things the way that I do and where it pairs up with Indigenous knowledge. So what we know from, there's a lot of research around PTSD and what they call complex trauma or historical trauma or intergenerational trauma. They've done a lot of research with survivors and their families of the Holocaust. And what we know is that it's not talking about the injury or the wound itself. It's presencing it. So in order to get to the wound without becoming consumed by it, we have to move into what's called liminal space. Liminal space is that space in between time. So it's where all time is and there is no time. We become deeply connected and immersed in what we're doing. So we go into, I believe it's like theta states, where it's a meditative state. And then we're working with that wound, and we emerge more powerful, more resourced. We're able to view that wound from expanded places. And as we do, we're expanded. So story, ritual, Indigenous practices, meditation, all does that. And Indigenous people do that. Native people do that inside of our traditional ceremonies. So it's part of everything we do. When the white, I think most people know the story of the white buffalo calf woman, and she came at a time just before contact, and she gave the Lakota people, the Lakota Sioux people, the 7 rights of the white buffalo calf woman. So long story short, she gave them the tools that they would need to, as they say, so that all might live. Those tools are the tools that we use to heal our own PTSD, our complex historical trauma, complex PTSD. And it's the same things that we use, that we're discovering in the more mainstream communities, also around trauma. So here we're just saying that, for me, this is a time where we get to each stand in our place in the circle, and we each get to bring our ancestors. So your ancestors standing next to mine, we get to sing into those places, and we get to feel those places together in that liminal space, and that's time beyond all times. And in this moment, presencing those wounds and healing those wounds together. So really, that's the opportunity of Indigenous practices meeting up with science and current day practices around trauma. Moving into these liminal spaces, like through meditation, song, and story, offers all of that. And it's fun. It's beautiful. It's touching. We know something is happening oftentimes because we can feel things moving inside us without knowing what those things are. So all through the course, we get to do that. All through the course, we're going to be taking opportunities to move deeply into that liminal space, because that's how we do that work. It's powerful work.
One of the things that we wrote on the page today and describing today was that why this work with ancestors is so important to open up our connection to the spirit world and our own higher self. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about more why that is, since I think so many of us have been influenced by Judeo-Christian traditions, or sometimes the East and meditative practices. And it's like that the assumption isn't that we kind of go through ancestor work to access the spirit world, whereas a lot of indigenous cultures, that really is a foundational practice. So just love to understand a little bit why it opens up this whole other realm for us.
Well, it's really, like I said, it goes back to the circle, right? So everything is that circle. And literally in the mainstream, we might think of that circle as a portal, right? So it's a gateway between time. We move through that, what we call liminal space, as we move into song and we move into ritual. And they're standing, each of us standing in that circle, whether it's a virtual circle or whether we're really, in this place standing next to each other. It really doesn't matter. It matters a little, but it, it's the space that we're creating together with our intention, standing side by side with each other. We bring our ancestors there with us. So it's not a matter of trying to, anytime we go outside of ourselves and we say we're going to do this thing and not this thing, or not us, we are moving outside of our true power. When we become more available, becoming more present, becoming more seated in this time, realizing that from this place, I can connect with all of creation. I can connect with all of time, past, present, and future, from this place, from who I am. And in fact, I was just hearing Bruce Lipton talk about that we see in the mirror a single image and we think, this is who I am. But really, we are made up of like 50,000 cells inside of our bodies, communities. So, and in all of those cells are our ancestors. So for every one of us living today, that we have at least, I think I was looking at the numbers, like 1,500 in the last ancestors that we hold inside of us, like physically, their epigenetics in our cells. So we're in that circle. It's just me and all of me in that circle. And it's all of my ancestors. And it's you standing next to me. And it is all of you and at least 1,500 of your ancestors, or 15,000. So whichever way you want to figure it. But it's tremendous when we think about a circle full of people who are becoming really present to this conversation and saying this shame this guilt, this holding back of who I am, not feeling like I know where I matter or how I matter, that time we're stepping into it. And we're going to look at that and we're going to become present to what's on the other side of it. And what I know, having been through those places, is that it's, it's a different type of power. So it's a power with our ancestors. Winona and LeDuc have this wonderful conversation around power, talking about the way that power is not in brute force. It comes from our ancestors. It comes from the earth. And it truly does. And that is a place, because of the trauma, because of the separation, we skipped away from. And as long as we keep trying to deny our past, to deny the connection that we have with the earth, we're robbing ourselves of that presence and of that power. As we talk about, what people come away from this, really, like I said, it's being more authentic, more powerful, not in a bigger than life way, not in a false or other than me way, but it's really holding my place in that circle.
Beautiful. Well, I think now would be a great time. We said we would go do an actual healing ritual to connect with the land of the forgotten. So we've created a bit of context of understanding. So really take some time now to guide us in this deep experiential process.
So I'm going to invite you to pick up your glass of water here and to put that down next to you someplace as we offer this prayer. So I'm going to light this smudge here so that you can. So this smudge and this this water, they act as witnesses for us, with us. There are stories about the way that the old people used to doctor using this smudge and used to put them on those wounds in our hearts. And so this smudge, this sacred, this shell, they know how to fill those places inside of us. This water knows how to fill those places. This water full of, Masaru Emoto has talked about the water and holding memory. We say in a native way that this was our first medicine. Beyond all medicines, that this water, this sacred water, is our medicine. And that the peoples, that was all that they used in the beginning of time. And so I invite you to remember that memory, to remember the water as sacred, to remember the water as holy and giving life, and holding all the memories and wisdom of our ancestors. To the spirit of the East, we offer you this water, Eshinza, Eshinza Nyo Nanawa, Eshinza, for all that you do. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for looking into this water, looking into those places where we are little, where we feel small and insignificant, and bringing the light and the beauty of new opportunities, new blessings with us. Spirit of the South, we offer you this water, thanking you, Eshinzani and Nanawa. Thank you, my relatives, for looking this way. Thank you for looking into our minds, bodies, and spirits, and blessing us with that gift of curiosity, that gift of exploring who we are and what it truly means to be a human being in this time and place, holding the wisdom of our ancestors. Thanking you for bringing that gift forward for us. Spirits of the West, Eshinzan Niananawa, Eshinza Niasolgabi. Thank you for all that you do for us, for cleansing us and washing away any pain, any sorrow around those wounds, and bringing in that healing light, bringing in that cleansing from the ocean, that wisdom from the depths of the ocean into our minds, bodies, and spirits, informing ourselves, calling to all of our ancestors and all of ourselves that this is a time of healing. This is a time of washing those wounds. Spirit of the North, Eshinzan Niananawa. Spirit of the Eagle, asking you to bless our minds, bodies, and spirits with your wisdom, with your perspective, elevating our minds, bodies, and spirits so that we get an expanded perspective of who we are in this moment and our significance that we have just in us being present in the circle, just in us being present in this time and this place. And spirit of the center of all of the great mystery, all of the unknown and the unseen. Thank you for the way that you work in our lives. Thank you for the way that you work inside of our minds, bodies, and spirits. The way that you work inside of every moment. Thank you for blessing this moment with and for the generations. So I invite you to take a drink of water, and I'm going to, and pray with this water yourself, just to take it and drink it. And as you do, to take it into your cells, feel it as medicine, as sacred medicine, drawing into your cells as I drink, and then I will share a song, and just sitting with that water for a moment. Ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh, hey, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hi, ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh, hey, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hi, ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh, hey, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hi, ah, hey, oh. Ah, hey, oh. Damyapa, Creator God, Takasha, Lagisha, Manitou, Spirits of the Four Directions, Eshinzan, Niawanawa. Thank you for all the ways that you bless us, my relatives. Thank you for the ways that you look at us, the way that you look inside our minds, bodies, and spirits. Thank you for the way that you're creating things in our lives, the way that you're healing things in our lives now as we speak. Thank you for all that you do for us. Oyananawa, all my relations. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful ritual. I know that we're going to have a chance to go with much deeper into these kinds of practices in your upcoming program,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll share about that a little bit in a little bit. But I just want to also understand a little bit more from the subtle level. Like we talked before today's program about how it's like our ancestors is almost like a field of consciousness, and that there's like a
Yeah.
root system of power that we're tapping into. And so it's like when we're opening these channels with ritual, with art, with song, with presence and healing, that we're also kind of reconnecting with a larger field of that creates us. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to get too emotional about that because that's where it hits, when indigenously, when we had all of our practices and we were living with the earth, it was like this network of human beings and knowledge and a networked system of within the earth. We had our ceremonies, we had our sacred items in place so that we were connected, and the world was alive. So we have stories that talk about, I say all my relations, we say all my relations. We talk about our relatives, the sky, the stars, the water, the earth, the animals. We were connected to all of those things, alive and well. And really, that's part of what we're moving into. That's the vision. And in order for that vision to ever happen again, it requires everything from us. It requires us to let go of who we think we are. Excuse me. It requires us to let go of who we think we are and who we think we have to be. It requires us to let go of the world as we understand it. So part of what we are doing as we move through this is allowing our ancestors the opportunity to really speak to us about those things. If not in our heads, it's not so important as much as it is that we embody it. So part of what I'm doing, I love that people like the way that I sound, but the truth of it is it doesn't matter how I sound. So indigenous singing, native singing isn't about the way I sound. It's about a conveyance of energy in the same way that this water is a conveyance of memory. So when all of those pieces are wholly and fully in place inside that circle, then we have the opportunity to create with that power. So, and we have to understand, again, letting go of our definitions of power and the way that we see power for ourselves and with each other. So I understand a power with creation, a power with this sacred water, a power with the earth. And again, that implies relationship, right? That I have a relationship with the water. I have a relationship with the earth. I have a relationship with my ancestors. And because of that, from those relationships, each of us being wholly complete, wholly standing in that circle, not wholly in a sacred way that is other than our humanity. It's both and, right? It's both sacred and human. It's both wounded and wholly powerful. So it's in the both and bringing those together that there's power. All of our pieces. And really, that's a restoration of the wholeness. So I will tell you that behind all of this for me, it goes back to when I was a young girl and I was learning a lot of things from different healers. And I was talking to a lot of different elders about prophecy. And everywhere it's talked about that we knew what was going to happen before contact. We knew that it was there's I mentioned the white buffalo calf woman. There are ceremonies put into place around all of this, all over. It's in the wampum belt. It's in everything. And I listened to elders after elders from different traditions talk about the prophecies, and there were almost always two prophecies. One that foretold what was going to happen the way that it was, and one that spoke of another opportunity that, and in some places, that opportunity circles back around. And we hear from our ancestors always that time moves in a circle, that time as a linear construct is an illusion, that it moves in circles and cycles. So as we line up in that circle, as we move into those circles in the circular ways, we know that we're calling forward that time where we get to revisit. We get to revisit the opportunity that we didn't have. We get to revisit an opportunity where we get to reconnect with creation as it was intended, to dissolve the illusions of us and them and separation. The largest wound that we have is the separation from a heaven that we know intuitively in our bones. That heaven, as I understand it, is not elsewhere. It's right here. And yet, the painful wounding, the separation from the earth itself is standing in the way of that. So, as we step into the circle, we begin to sing and we begin to pray and we get to move through those places very powerfully. Already, what I know is that prayer is already working. You wouldn't be here unless it was. Already, this water is working inside of you. Already, these sacred things, these songs, these sacred things are working inside of you. And it's really walking into the circle and allowing that, taking our place in the circle and allowing that to move through us and showing up for us. That's what's required. And it's a simple thing, and yet it's a very powerful thing. At that point, our ancestors say, that it's possible that we could have a heaven on earth here.
Beautiful. Well, I think that provides such an incredible context for this work that it's like as we reweave our own ancestral stories, we're part of the reweaving of humanity into our higher potential in heaven on earth. And what a beautiful, beautiful message. And really to see that as we engage this work, that we are the microcosm for the whole. That we're doing this work for the planet, but in our own little body with our family lineage and whatever brokenness and woundedness that there is in that there is this wholing of the human family. What a beautiful message!
Yeah. It's a powerful message because it, I guess to me, the thing that, immobilizes us, we feel oftentimes too small, and we are, and the beauty of that is we don't have to pretend that we're bigger than we are. If we're standing in that circle side by side and we're doing this together, that's where the power is. So I'm excited to share this with the Shift Network, with all of your people, with our communities. And at this particular time, it's a real blessing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me just how much of an upsurge of interest in this work there has been. I mean, we had one of our team members suggest the idea of doing the Ancestral Healing Summit, and we thought, oh, that sounds interesting and important, but we had no idea how much interest there would be and how much it would really take off, and that it really feels like this is the time. It's like in order for us to shift to heaven on earth, we have to do this ancestral healing work and reweave the human family back together. So I really honor you for all that you're doing to advance this. So let's talk a little bit about your upcoming program, which we're super excited that you are offering. And it is it's a brand new program that we've never featured before in the Shift Network. It's called Reweaving Your Ancestral Story: Reconnect with the Forgotten and Rekindle Belonging with Ritual and Song. It's going to be a very experiential journey. This is not just about a lot of theory. It's really about doing the work of healing your ancestral story. And we all have complexity in our ancestral story. There's parts that we want to hide from. There's parts that have been suppressed, and that's like a root system that we don't have access to, as we've talked about today. So you can find this program that Gemma will be teaching at yourancestralstory.com, yourancestralstory.com. It's going to be a 7-week program. And it really is going to be a chance to do this healing, that we expect you to come through on the other side with a new mythology, a new understanding of your family legacy and history, a new sense of belonging and place. As part of what Gemma's really sharing with us is you reconnect with your roots and find your sense of belonging when you do this work. So, Gemma, I'd love for you to share in your own words what you're excited to bring through in this program and share with people, and then give us a tour of the modules you'll be teaching.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be taking groups through with this work. So we're going into the land of the forgottens, those forgotten places, cast aside places where our ancestors dwell, and really looking at who our ancestors were in that time and how they might have been viewed in society at that time, as well as who they are to us and how we might see them in this time. So as the last several hundred years has gone by, there's so much that has changed. At one time, people felt ashamed because of the color of their skin or because of how they looked. Now we can recognize that there is beauty in diversity, and that it's not only beautiful, but it's necessary. So from this place, we get to expand the perspective of our ancestors. And what we know is that our ancestors grow as we grow. It's not like they are stagnant. They're alive in their own realm. And again, part of it, what happens as we begin to spend more time with them is those lines become blurred, as they should be, right? So, and it's like another stage of life, another stage of reality that our ancestors are in. So as we grow and we presence, we get to bring them along, and we're going to be taking them into, and we're going to be meeting them in places, literally and figuratively, in the land of the forgotten. So the first place that we get to go to is the land of differently forgotten. So we're going to be talking about those places where our ancestors felt different or odd because of the way they looked or because of the way they felt, whether external or internal. And we get to really presence them and look at how their story and our story mirrors. So using story, we know that oftentimes that happens. There's a whole science around the whole mirror neurons that are happening there. But as we get to view our ancestors' stories of being different, feeling outcast, feeling not enough, we get to presence that in our own lives, in those places where we feel not enough or odd or different. And then we get to move into the land of the silent forgotten, those places of expression and finding significance, and those places where our ancestors were fearful because of retribution or persecution that they might have experienced because of their beliefs, because of who they were born to, because of how they valued life and the people that they loved. So we get to presence that as well in our own lives, those places where we feel fearful and hold back from expressing our significance. And then the third place we get to visit is those places of honoring loss and death, the place of the unbearable forgottens, and really honoring those people that we've loved so much and have lost, either through loss, separation, or death. Because oftentimes in our lives, we don't get a chance to presence those places, and they become wounds. They become wounds that seep out through us, and they stop us from really showing up in those places and sharing with the people that we love that are in our lives now. So we get to honor that place and our loss in the land of the the unbearable forgottens. And then we move on to the land of the invisible forgottens, and looking at those places where our ancestors had to hide or become invisible, and where we mirror that ourselves, where we mirror that fear of being seen and being authentic and vulnerable. And then finally, we get to dwell with the ancestors. We get to really sit in these places of being with and deepening our connection with place and taking a breath with the ancestors. And finally, we have a feast at the end. And this is a celebration with and for the ancestors. I have some wonderful things planned there. It's going to be, that's the real big fun party. So there's so much that we're going to be going, as Stephen mentioned, we're going to be going through all of it experientially. Very little, a fraction of it is head stuff. It's knowledge that you'll need, an orientation to move into the land. But really, the change happens when we experience. When we move from the place that we're in now with our ancestor stories to in a place of expansion. And using story and song and ritual, we're able to do that very quickly. Already, you've experienced just a little tiny bit of it. We're doing lots of explanation here, but in those tiny moments, you feel expanded. You can feel yourself being deepened and enriched in non-linear ways. That's the beauty of, the internet as we have it now, is that we can share that from wherever we're at and expand in those dynamic ways, non-linearly, beyond knowledge, beyond fact and data and what science is doing. Our ancestors have been doing this for thousands of years before we came up with the science behind it or a way to articulate it through English language. So that's another piece that we're going to be adding, is we're going to be learning new language, new symbols, healing symbols, developing that language between each other. So I use a lot of indigenous language, native languages, because they hold a context for healing and for relationship that's expanded. So I've shared much of that today. So when we say relatives, Nanawa, we're talking about the relatives, those that we are biologically, and we're biologically related to everyone, all of them. So we're talking about our DNA human being ancestors. We're also talking about those plant people and plant nations that feed our souls and feed our bodies. They're not just feeding us on a cellular biological level, they're feeding us spiritually as well. So we get to talk about all of that throughout exploring these lands of the forgottens.
Well, what a beautiful offering and that you've created here. And I can just feel the power that's going to be unleashed and the healing that's going to be unleashed in the people who join you. So I'll share a little bit more about it. Again, you can find all the details laid out at yourancestralstory.com, yourancestralstory.com. This is going to be a video-based class, so you can engage in the same way with Gemma as we're doing today and really see and participate in a ritual context. It's quite remarkable, actually, how much of a ritual context and container can be created in a virtual environment. That's one of the great learnings we've had at the Shift Network. And I know Gemma's really going to invite you into a very sacred space that allows you to do very deep healing and really engage this larger reweaving of your story with the human story. So it's going to be on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You get the 7 video classes with Gemma, which includes live interactive Q&A time towards the end. There's also small group talking circles where you can explore and really share what's alive for you in your own journey over the 7 weeks. There's going to be weekly exercises and practices you can do at home. There's a Facebook community. You also get the recordings, video, audio, full PDF, word-for-word transcripts. There's a lot of different ways to engage. And on the page, you also see there are a number of great extra bonuses that complement and supplement the material that you'll be learning in the program. So first, there's a collection of dialogues with different Native Indigenous peoples. It's called Intimate Conversations about Healing with Our Ancestors through Art, Story, and Ritual. Those conversations are with Rowan White, Melissa Melero-Moose, and Melissa Fernandez. That really deepen this content, explore some other facets of it. There's also a video dialogue with Louisa Tish called Egun Re'o, Cracking the Ancestral Code for Healing Our World. And then a full PDF collection of artwork from Gemma called Reweaving Your Ancestral Story Affirmation Cards. Gemma, you want to share anything about those?
Well, I love affirmation cards. I've been making affirmation cards forever because they're a way of pulling in a nonlinear way, wisdom from the ancestors. So as we use the cards and you get to, print these out and then shuffle them, they're designed to go through every week. But of course, then you have a deck or a small deck of cards that you can pull from in times when you're looking for wisdom. And it's a way of very concretely saying, this is what my ancestors are talking about. This is what I need to focus on right now. So it's a way of moving into conversation with ancestors. I like to say it's kind of like advanced training wheels. It gives us some kind of tangible tools to navigate with the unseen in our lives. So There's so much fun.
That's fantastic. And there's also a special bonus, which is available only today until midnight. This gives you a little incentive to go to the page at yourancestralstory.com and make a decision now when you have the most information, when you've just been in this field of sharing and ritual with Gemma. And if you're getting a yes to move forward, then you have an extra bonus when you do so. And it's called Forgotten Places. And this is an extended guided audio meditation, 30 minutes, that takes you into the forgotten places of ancestors and sacred landscapes. So it's something that you can really apply immediately before the course even begins. So that's the special bonus when you sign up today. So the program is going to begin on May 15th, run on Wednesdays at 5 Pacific. We've kept it very accessible in terms of the investment. It's just 3 payments of $109 or 1 payment of $297, which is about 10% discount for paying in full. So I encourage you to go to the page, give it a read, tune in, and if you are at all called to this work, that you're in very good hands with Gemma, and you can see testimonials from people who have worked with her in the past, and we know that you're in for a truly healing, transformational journey. So Gemma, thank you so much. Oh, actually, it looks like there's a second bonus that I forgot about, which is a video dialogue with Gemma on from the Ancestral Healing Summit. So you also get that even if you didn't participate in the summit when you sign up by midnight tonight. So Gemma, it's been a beautiful hour with you already. I just want to invite you to take a couple minutes and share from your heart directly with the people who have joined us here about your invitation to join you to do this deeper work and be part of both the personal benefit of reweaving our ancestral story, but also the collective reweaving as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Stephen, thank you for making this available to your community, and especially, I've said it over and over again. In this particular time, it's so necessary. I think that, my heart breaks when I scroll through Facebook and I see so many people suffering on both a personal level and a global level. And I think that, we need places like this not only to become available to ourselves and to sit quietly inside a ritual, and also to be there together. These wounds we experience so often together, and then we personalize, we draw them in, and we carry the full weight of them ourselves. So to be able to share them with a community, to be able to share healing language with it, to share it with each other and have a context for it is not only personally empowering, but it's also and revitalizing in many ways. But it is on a global scale, it's so significant. I think that people often, talk to a lot of friends, and I hear overwhelm when it comes to what do I do? What do I do in all of this? How can I show up? How can I become available to what's happening? How can I stay relevant to the conversations that are happening? This is a powerful way for you to do that from the comfort of your home and with each other. And so it's just an honor. It's an honor to be a part of this. It's an honor to be part of the ancestral healing conversation and to be part of the Shift Network. So I thank all of you for being part of that. I thank you for listening. I thank you for drinking your water and using that water, understanding it as sacred, understanding yourself as sacred, as the way that spirit expresses itself in this time and place, and to know that you are significant, that just you being present in that circle is necessary and it's important. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this time and this place and all that you do.
Well, you are a gift to us all, Gemma. Thank you. And all of you watching, you're warmly welcome into Gemma's program. It is really going to be a blessing, a liberation, a healing, and really it's a new area for us entirely. So I know our folks really are on a path of growth and transformation. So this is often a missing link that we haven't done because it hasn't necessarily been part of our cultural inheritance. So it's a real gift to be able to reweave our ancestral stories. And thank you, Gemma, for leading the way. So again, you can find all the details about Gemma's program at yourancestralstory.com, and you get the special 2 bonuses when you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you, Gemma. Thank you all for joining us, and let's go out there and bring the human family back together and create heaven on earth, as you so beautifully shared.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Did you want to, since we opened with some prayer, do you want to close us out with some prayer or blessing to close the circle?
Absolutely. Damiyapa Dakashala Gishimanatu, spirits of the 4 directions, spirits of our ancestors, we thank you for this sacred time together. We know that in this moment you have been with us. We know that you are healing, doctoring us, taking care of all those places of wounding that we carry within ourselves, within our understanding. Thanking you for giving us clarity. Thank you for helping us to know which way we need to move forward. Thank you for blessing every step we take, every move that we make, every word that we share. Thank you for all the ways that you bless our lives and those lives around us. Thank you for blessing our homes, our families, our communities, our nations, all of creation. Oyanina Nawa, all my relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you all for joining.